This is a Noble Gold Investments alert. Gold has surged 46% in less than a year, doubling the gains of NASDAQ and S&P 500. Global reserves are shifting, exposing cracks in the monetary system. Investors are losing confidence in paper gold and demanding physical metal, creating a massive gap between gold owed and gold available. And you can profit from it. Right now, Noble Gold Investments has a limited supply of investment-grade gold bars and coins available. Smart investors are already moving into physical gold. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy for you to do the same. And right now, when you make a qualified investment, Noble Gold will add a free 10th ounce gold coin to your order. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com now. noblegoldinvestments.com. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Out of the matrix, into prime reality. That's the mantra. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube for a PSYOP warning, a PSYOP alert. I think there's one in the making. Today, we're going to introduce you to the Rainmaker, who, and I'll give you the buried lead, I think is being installed as the person, the guy who is supposed to bring all the opposition from weather modification, climate engineering, geoengineering, bring the opposition to the table and sort of seduce people into buying or drinking the Kool-Aid. And it kind of started coming together in my mind a few days ago. Some of you might know, maybe the Floridians of and people who are paying attention, that Florida has introduced a geoengineering bill, and they're trying to ban a lot of these things, or at least change the regulations around them. We've had that same thing in Tennessee, went into effect in July of 2024. But I don't know if it's really bearing any fruit. We're still seeing the same things in the sky, not really reduced, maybe for a few weeks, but then they find their loopholes and altitudes and whatnot. But let me show you this young man here who was testifying in front of the Florida legislature for that bill. Let's play this clip here. Let's watch this.
Augustus Doricko. I'm the CEO and founder of Rainmaker. We're a cloud seeding company that is enhancing precipitation via advanced radar and also drones for the sake of supplementing water supplies for farms, cities, reservoirs, and wildlife throughout the United States. Our ultimate vision is to end water scarcity, and we've begun that mission already. I'm testifying to not oppose the spirit of this bill, which I think is well-founded, but the current configuration of the bill that I think would impede this mission for ending water scarcity, and also for bringing the best-in-class technology to Florida and the rest of the United States. And so the first point that I'd like to make is the difference between solar radiation management and cloud seeding. And so Senator Garcia did bring this up briefly. Solar radiation management is a very new technology. It's not something that's been tested at length. NOAA has done some very initial experiments on its efficacy. It is attempting to reduce the amount of solar radiation that makes it down to the planet by injecting reflective aerosols into the upper atmosphere. Once you inject these aerosols, they stay in the stratosphere for years. They have effects on the entire climate. The data from these experiments, because the experiments have been so few, is limited. And so the implications of them are not something that are well tested yet.
Okay, so this is, I just put the short clip there. Half of what he said here is nonsense. There's been decades of doing what he just described. And everybody who talks about it is labeled, of course, a tinfoil head. Yet legislators are moving forward, citing these decades of data, citing these decades of deterioration in nature because of it, and deterioration in human health as the evidence. And so legislatures are moving forward trying to ban this. For better or worse, some of them are just sort of goodwill efforts. Some of them might be more legitimate. However, what is more important is when I was watching this clip started making the rounds on social media a few days ago. I was like, man, why is this kid the face here, why is, I mean, I looked him up, he's 24. So 24-year-old kid is the CEO and founder of Rainmaker Technologies, a cloud seeding company. That's nothing new. That's been around for decades. I mean, we're going on 100 years. Why is this kid in the legislature representing a fairly large industry of established companies that and opposing the bill in its current nature? And so then I thought, man, that face looks familiar. And I remembered, watch this here.
Augustus Doricko, and I'm the owner of Rainmaker, a cloud seeding company that makes it rain and snow more over farms, ski resorts, water, and hydroelectric utilities. And I'm here today because in all things, I aspire to be a faithful Christian, and part of that means stewarding creation and stewarding all of what God has put on this green earth. I have no intention and no desire to play God, but again, want to serve him. And part of what I'm concerned about in Bill 2063 is that it would prevent Tennessee from stewarding creation with all the tools it has available. Part of the bill pertains to stratospheric air soil injection, which is an altogether different technology from cloud seeding. And so I thought that I would talk about what cloud seeding is.
Yeah, so he's just going to say the same thing, and that was in the Tennessee legislature a year ago. Notably, also the only representative of the weather modification industry than a 23-year-old kid. So here I go thinking, hold on a minute, there's something else going on here. There is something else going on here. I think we're at the beginning of a PSYOP, of a psychological operation. Now, for years and decades, this was a looming subject and a centerpiece of the truth and freedom community was that they were absolutely opposed to weather modification, geoengineering, the trails in the sky, and all of that, and people don't want that. Now, we have recently seen another psychological operation very much in the same vein where you had almost at least the majority, for example, of the MAGA, of the Trump voters, were historically opposed to electric vehicles and electric transportation for various reasons, but most importantly, I would say for freedom and privacy reasons. Electric cars posing all these possibilities to limit where a car can go, autonomous driving. None of this sat well with the MAGA crowd, with the classic Trump voter. Now you had an operation out there where Tesla dealerships or Tesla production sites and Tesla cars were being vandalized in this huge wave of attacks. And boom, all of a sudden you have a shift in the narrative, a shift in the thinking of the MAGA crowd where they switch over to electric and they support Tesla and support electric vehicles. Boom, mission accomplished. Now, here we have a similar scenario. We have this young kid from California who's supposedly the sole founder and starter of Rainmaker Technologies, and we'll get into that. I did a deep dive on the kid, and I believe he is the mullet behind this PSYOP. He's going to be presented more and more. I actually predict that everybody's going to know at some point Augustus Doricko because he's going to be front and center and bring the opposition in because it looks innocent looking, cute young kid who's going to make this happen. But let's look into a little bit of his story here because, once you do that, things hold on. There he is, Augustus. Well, look at Augustus here. Let's do that. First off, this is Augustus probably posting on his social media that he was speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative event and had a fantastic talk about cloud seeding and all that stuff with William Jefferson Clinton here. Yeah, I don't know if that's such a good picture to take, Augustus, This is his X profile. And the first line that he leads with is controlling the weather at Rainmaker Corporation. I'm not going to lie to you. When I heard Rainmaker, immediately intelligence came up for me. This is typical. These names scream CIA. They scream NSA. They scream intelligence community. They scream Intel Q. They scream DARPA. It's just, there's something about how they do things so obvious in your face. So I kept digging a little deeper. Augustus Doricko is the 24-year-old founder of Rainmaker, a startup focused on cloud seeding and weather modification. Former UC Berkeley student, dropped out to pursue hard tech and entrepreneurship. Combines Christian faith, patriotism, and Silicon Valley disruption ethos. This is so important. Keep that in mind. This is the new generation. We have sort of the old atheistic or new age or no age, whatever, tech guys, but there's a growing number of young, supposedly Christian leaders coming up, and this is part of the bigger operation in this nation, the evangelical operation, which is ultimately going to lead to the end of Christianity. That's the plan anyways, but this is a typical thing, and it's being observed and it's being noticed. Known for a bold public persona, transparent about advocating for weather control, like I say, controversial about it. But what is Rainmaker? It's a geoengineering company using AI, precision weather models, and custom drones to trigger rainfall. If people think this is something that's, sort of rare and new, none of it could be further from the truth. Go to NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration or Agency, and look up all the programs that are currently and have been for years in place to create rainfall, help with the precipitation, help with snow. That's why certain ski resorts never run out of snow, no matter if they do the man-made thing. They do this here. So this is not a new thing at all. And so this kid sort of disruptive. The only thing disruptive is that he's a different kind of person advocating for this. And I think he's going to bring in the entire young and conservative opposition crowd. And you'll be interested who he is connected to. Here's some of the funding and backers. So the company got 6.3 million seed round with notable investors. Peter Thiel aligned 1517 fund. Are we surprised that the PayPal mafia is in this? No, we're not surprised. Champion Hill Ventures, which is defense focused, and this is interesting. So this company and this young kid is as much about controlling the weather as he is about defending America. And there's a huge overlap in almost all emerging technologies and almost all emerging projects in America today that are one thing on the surface and defense oriented on the other side. Very interesting. And we're going to get into that in another show, why that actually is. Tamarack Global. Then we have Srinivasan, ex-Coinbase CTO, and he's also a Thiel fellow, this young kid, Doricko. He received a grant from the Thiel Fellowship Society. So anything that is, I was sort of, when I looked at him, and this is the interesting part, when I looked at him, I thought, this is a Musk-esque operation. So Elon Musk is single-handedly, if you will, as a public persona, brought into the space of acceptance all the skeptics about, like I said, electric vehicles, 5G and satellite Wi-Fi, surveillance, everything that's connected. That soon he's going to be the face of Neuralink and the merger of human biology and technology. And this is the new way of doing things. They saw that, pardon my French, but it doesn't work to put old, tired faces on the screens that wear the same old suits and speak in the same old boring language. Those guys can sell a glass of water to someone in a drought because they're boring. You can't, the John Kerrys and those folks, nobody listens to them anymore. You need people that are different. You need people that are disruptors. You need people that are on the social medias. You need people that seem to be part of your culture, your system. And then, Elon's big, and that was the ace, right? The takeover of Twitter, the sanctioned takeover, because they had to allow him to buy it, or at least his group of investors, and the supposed bringing back a free speech. That's what got the conservative, the MAGA crowd. That's what got everyone fired up about Elon Musk. And since then, he was selling hotcakes to hungry people, and they're just buying up everything that man says. It's cult-like. It's truly a cult. But this is the new strategy. And so I predict that Augustus Doricko, and think about Augustus, think about the history of that name, the emperor. But Augustus Doricko, this kid is going to become the face of how cool it is to manipulate weather, create weather, change weather, and do all these things. And they're going to make this basically as cool as X and Tesla and rockets and all that crap. I predict this is who's going to be the face of it based on what we're observing here. There's there's military and intelligence links. His venture capital and advisor ecosystem, the people around him, have connections with Palantir, again, Peter Thiel, 8VC, and DoD circles. So like I say, that is pattern recognition. You go and look for these connections. Are they there? And it's always the same names that show up in the background. It's always the same investors, always the same circles, because it is, after all, a very, very small group of people. Unlike, and I want to play this clip here because it really sort of pissed me off, unlike what this guy says, who, frankly, in my perception, does not have a clue, but is being pushed out through the algorithms like crazy.
Cabal of shadowy dudes around one table. It is just an alignment of many different interests, different families, different corporations, different bankers, or organized crime groups, all sort of playing games for power. And these guys have that much power, and those guys have that much power, and interests tend to align. Like, the general vibe in the corporations will probably align with the vibe of the bankers, and their vibe will probably align a fair bit with some of this organized crime stuff, and we'll fund this terrorist organization, Mujahideen, until it's not convenient anymore. And then we'll actually use them as a patsy to go to war because there's terrorists over there, god damn it. It's not like...
So, Ian Carroll, some of you know him, he's blown up seemingly out of nowhere, which, we know that usually does not happen. And he says stuff like, there is no cabal, there is no connected group of people that sort of steers things in the background. There is an overlapping of interests and corporate bullshit. That's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. If you go deep enough, that's exactly what it is. It's highly coordinated and connected. And there's really only a small group of entities that steer this ship, and they do it in a very calculated way. So yes, Ian, this is exactly the problem. This is the 80-20 thing. The guy does good research, steals from a lot of other people, puts it together, makes it look good. And then he gives 80% of the truth, but has no clue as to how it actually works. And the 20% is where people get pushed in the wrong direction. The whole thing is that, yes, there is a very coordinated effort, and people like the PayPal Mafia are not necessarily the originators. They are a few layers down the ladder, but they are still a very coordinated group doing things in a very coordinated way for a quarter century or more. So what is interesting about this Doricko kid, let me pull this up one more time here, is I looked up the Rainmaker website, rainmaker.com. Usually when we have an idea, whether that's for a movement or just to transport some sort of message and help get the information out, we look for domains that might be available. So when you go to these domain registration websites, a lot of them are already taken, sort of a lot of the good ones. Rainmaker is a really, really good one. And interestingly enough, it was registered in 1997. So officially, the company Rainmaker Technologies was founded in 2023 or 2024. However, Rainmaker was reserved in 1997. Now, this can mean a number of things. There was a movie that came out in 1997 with Matt Damon based on a John Grisham novel, The Rainmaker. So, it could have been, I don't think they did movie websites at that time, but I could be wrong. Could have been that. They reserved that website. It could have been that In-Q-Tel, the venture fund ecosphere of the intelligence community had reserved a variety of these website names, and now it's, you know, giving them out. We don't know. We couldn't find out the history. It's all hidden. It's all private, but it is definitely interested. Could have been just bought by someone who predicted the rise of the internet and then sold this to this company. I mean, these are possibilities. I'm just saying it was registered almost 30 years ago. So, you know, this is something to look into when we look at those things. Here's another very interesting article that I came across, which speaks to this new alignment. Peter Thiel, who is highly involved with the current administration, Palantir, big guy, who is one of the makers of JD Vance, who is Elon Musk's former business partner, co-founder of PayPal. He is sort of one of the biggest names, a self-proclaimed Christian libertarian. And this is a pretty good article. I would encourage you to look it up in Vanity Fair, where the author wrote, Zoe Bernard wrote, Christianity was borderline illegal in Silicon Valley. Now it's the new religion. Believers like Gary Tanner flipping the script in the venture capital world, making faith matter just as much as the ability to turn a fortune, says one entrepreneur. There are people that are leveraging Christianity to get closer to Peter Thiel. So this is becoming a strategy. This is a big thing in the world today. And we have to, in the next years, be very aware. What is signal? What is noise? What matters? And when it comes to where the mainstream society is moving, mainstream politics is moving, we need to be able to discern the signal from the noise, right? Noise is a lot of the distraction that's being thrown at people, a lot of the stuff that's causing, you know, huge upheaval, like Zelensky in the Oval Office, it is, you know, shouting match with Trump and Vance. Now, those things, not really significant in the big scheme of things, highly popular in the media because it takes a lot of attention from whatever else you're doing in the background. But we need to look at the signals. And how do we know whether someone or a movement or a new idea is team humanity or team technocracy? And I think there's a few things that we can help ourselves with to sort of get that discernment down, okay? So how to spot these psyops and discern true intent. And I actually started writing a book on how to, a while ago, on how to discern psychological operations in the modern age, how to know that something is a psyop, because there's surefire signs. It might take me a little bit to finish it, but I think it's going to be very useful. It's something that people pick up and sort of they can contrast and compare, probably as an ebook, and just see, oh, it has all the hallmarks of a psyop. I might as well tune out. So how to spot them? Technocracy always frames humans, behavior or nature as the problem, and technology as a solution. And while I agree that all problems can be led back to us, technocracy will always say, oh, these things you can't really change, human nature, but technology is a solution, right? So things like we must reduce human consumption, emissions, population, and specifically when it comes to population and stuff like that, this has been a very popular argument. True science doesn't confirm that. However, we can learn that when new solutions are being presented to us, we have to ask certain questions. Is this about making people more sovereign or more dependent on systems? This is a fundamental question. Team humanity will always work on helping people get more independent. Team technocracy wants more power in fewer hands, concentrated in the hands of experts. So it's about empowering humanity, creativity, self-reliance, and not a new form of technology that supposedly can solve all the problems. Does it promote centralization or decentralization, right? What we're seeing right now with the entire Doge effort, the Doge effort in the federal government, it seems so good to so many people, but the solution still is the same. Replace most of the human workforce with AI. That is centralization, not decentralization. And these breadcrumbs where certain things are being pushed back to the states are simply not enough. That's just lip service, right? When you give certain decisions back to the states, that is not enough when you have a highly centralized, powerful, AI-driven federal government. And so you have to see, does the PSYOP, when it is a PSYOP, does it serve technocracy to put more control in the hands of technology through digital currencies, through digital ideas, through AI governance? Or do people talk about homesteading, decentralized networks, local food, local energy, local networks? The thing with the latter is also that people that do that very seldomly have a vote that they want from you. Very seldomly do they have big solutions that they want to sell you on. They're actually telling you, take the power back, bring it back to you. So you can ask yourself, if it requires digital compliance or limits your freedom of movement, speech, or choice, is it a good thing? Does it help me, or is it against me? So we have to start asking those questions. The biggest trap of our time is that ideas and movements are being repackaged in such a sophisticated way that we think we're supporting something good when really we're supporting our own enslavement. Watch the language. PSYOPs use emotionally soothing or scientific language to hide anti-human agenda. Remember, sustainable development sounds great, right? It's pushed for, that's what pushes Agenda 2030 and all that, UN driven crap. Watch for those words. Equity sounds like a great word, but how it's being, diversity, equity, inclusion has probably been the most prohibitive and most sort of skill and talent driven policy in human history, where you are, you're not providing equal opportunities, but you're wanting to guarantee equal outcome. It's like you're saying, well, we're going to make sure that everybody in this race wins. Well, that's not how races work. One is the winner, one's the second, one's the third. That's how a race works, right? But if you want to guarantee that everybody wins, nobody's going to be happy with that, because nobody can live up to their full potential. Safe and effective. Repeated to silence dissent, not informed. Remember those campaigns. So ask yourself, what's not being said? What are those buzzwords? And this is what, is basically, if you think about the buzzwords of the last years in the political movements, it's just 2 4-letter words: woke and MAGA. It's all reduced to 2 4-letter words. Now, the interesting thing is, when you look behind woke and MAGA, the fundamental direction exactly the same. The clothing is different. The language is different. The ideological frameworks are different. Yes, one is ultra, how do I say that? Non-boundary. It's like anything goes. It's absolute madness. The other mimics is more conservative and sort of a little self-restrained. But truthfully, they're walking in the same technocratic direction. And they're both, think of how many people 2 4-letter words were able to bring into their camps. Tens of millions, potentially hundreds of millions of people that either identify as woke or MAGA. It's quite a impressive thing to do. Who benefits? Follow the money, follow the power. That's what we always say. Who gains more control, more data, more influence, or funding? Is it empowering local families or data harvesting mega corporations? Are you being nudged emotionally to comply? Listen, how much control do you have over weather modification when these things are being done even more than they already have been? Is this something that empowers anybody more or less? Is this something where, and it's already been happening for so long that sort of the ship has sailed, but imagine if we ramp it up even more, if it becomes acceptable in the mainstream rather than being something that people want to end and fight and get over with. These campaigns right now, and it's what David Icke has famously said. First, while you're setting everything up, you need to try to hide it from people. You need to ridicule anyone who talks about it. You need to make it seem like this crazy conspiracy theory. At a certain point, it becomes so big. Now you need to sell it to the public. And that's what the Donald Trumps, the Elon Musks, the Augustus Doricos are there for. They are selling this now. They're doing it fast. This is about something much different. And oftentimes those who are being used to sell it are not in the picture, are not in the know. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. False choices. This is the biggest one, right? The Hegelian dialectic. Would you rather live under technocratic rule or chaos? And I mean, they're not saying the words technocratic rule, but what has happened, for example, in America and Europe over the last years was crossing all boundaries, right? Having policies, social policies, cultural policies, migration policies that are insane, and that could only lead to the chaos that we see now, where you have all the big cities run down, poverty, public defecation, drug abuse, murder, rape, crime, you name it. It's all there at a level that we haven't seen. And so then you say, well, see, this doesn't work. So what are we going to do? Well, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be very, very easy. We're going to clean this up. We're going to make sure that we can properly identify everyone, digital ID, biometrics. It's going to be in the background. You're not going to notice it. But if something happens, we know exactly who did it, where they were. And some people are rightfully saying, well, it's gotten so bad. I lived in San Francisco all my life. I don't even want to go outside anymore. It's so crazy. Actually, this would be a good thing. Actually, if we could know who's doing the bad things, this could be a good thing. After all, I don't have anything to hide. And this is exactly where they wanted people to, the point that they wanted to push them to. Economically, spiritually, culturally, societally, in all levels, push them to the point where they say, yes, we need that. Look how bad it's gotten. Well, why has it gotten so bad? It is an artificial problem that was produced on purpose. And this is the problem, reaction, solution, the same thing all over again. And so now, what weather modification and geoengineering seems to be really about, and from all my research, that's the only thing that really makes sense, is that this is about terraforming. This is about changing the atmosphere of this construct and changing the makeup to favor a different life form. Now, one theory is that as we are being pushed into the transhumanist agenda and ultimately into new avatars, potentially silicon-based, that this carbon-based body in this carbon-based atmosphere, or at least, for our purposes, carbon-based, there's not a lot of carbon in the atmosphere compared to all the other stuff, but we need that carbon, and the body needs the carbon, and nature needs the carbon, the CO2. And people claim that this huge reduction would terraform the Earth into a atmosphere and into a makeup that would favor a different species. Now, we could speculate whether that is a species from a different dimension, a different world, whether that is us in the future, but it certainly looks that way, that all the activity, despite our better judgment, would lead to that. And that this massive, massive push, and even though currently in the public arena, there's a little less talk about climate change, but the anti-climate change projects are not stopping. They're getting more money, and they're getting ramped up. So I think this is ultimately what all of this is really about. It's not about making more rain. Not about that. I think it's about terraforming. And I also think that, this ecosystem, if left alone, is sort of a self-balancing ecosystem. If I listen to people like Dane Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org, He says everything's out of whack because we've been messing with it for so long, and it needs to stop. And this ecosystem needs to get the chance to rebalance itself. Now we have 24-year-old kids who are going to sell this dream that we can control everything, that we literally can play God, God of this world, and that we can make it all better. And you combine that with all the other AI initiatives, and it's all going in the same direction. And these folks, in my perception, do not have any kind of spiritual maturity or understanding. They don't have a connection. They don't understand rhythm and harmony, consciousness. And so what they're doing is, and what's been going on for so long, is never go to the root of the problem, but try finding new fixes for the symptoms. And it's getting more and more insane and crazy. So I would encourage you to look out for this one. We might have caught this one very early. I call it the Rainmaker PSYOP. And I predict that either this kid or a group of people like him will be presented to the public as the new weather engineering apostles, people supposed to soften the opposition and bring them over to the cheering camp. So, that's the likely scenario here. All right, my friends. Well, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. It's always a pleasure, always an honor to have you. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Are you looking for like-minded and like-hearted people to connect with? Then the Inspired Community on Locals is the right place for you. You can post, comment, share, and connect with others, and our shows there are completely uncensored and unfiltered. It's stuff we can't talk about here. It's such a great community, and there are zero trolls. We keep the subscription fees super low, so 19 cents per day keep the trolls away. Join us today at inspired.locals.com. We can't wait to see you there.